Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, real excited to kick things off in here today. Just a quick introduction. We're getting started on time for the sake of the respect of everybody in this room. So we'll have more people joining, but we're going to get things moving today. My name is Vince Carone with Cultivate Advisors. We're really excited to have all of you here. This is our virtual live training. It's a fancy name for a webinar. We call it that because we like to interact with you along the way. So you just use the chat feature. I'll be talking to you a little bit more about that as we go. For those of you that haven't met me, this is me. This is what I look like. You're looking at me. You can see me on here. That's enough of me. But I am the VP of the training department here at Cultivate Advisors. A little bit more about what we do in a second if you're not already familiar. I know we have a mix of clients and non-clients on the webinar currently. Just some expectations to kick things off as we start to dive into today, just to make sure we can make this pretty seamless. We have a couple different options here. We have the chat box that most of you just used here. If not, you can look on the bar at the bottom of your Zoom. It would say chat, and you can write a message to me as the panelist, or you can send it to everybody in the group. Use the chat for live discussion amongst yourselves. If you have something to add to something you want to talk about it with the group. If you have a question that applies to the group and you want to send it to me, you can send me a private question using the Q&A bar at the end as well. And if the question applies to the group, I'll do my best to answer it real time, or at least try to at the end. Great question, Laura. This webinar will be recorded. And if the question is unique to you, we'll take the question offline and make sure we answer it privately in what we call the parking lot. And this will help us stay on course as we go. I am going to launch 3 or 4 polls throughout the webinar. Just help us keep a pulse on the group, get some engagement, and really give us some feedback to grow and start to groom these webinars or virtual live trainings as we start to move forward. And then post-webinar, we're going to give you a text code to get the slide deck as well. So for those of you that like to take notes, take some notes. I'll make sure you have access to get this deck as well. But we don't have a lot of words on the screen, so take some notes if something really sticks out to you. So just to kick things off, I know a lot of you are our current clients here, and you could probably share a few things along the way. But for those of you that aren't, here's a quick 30 seconds on who Cultivate Advisors is and what we do. Quite simply put, we're a small business advisory firm based in Chicago. We have hundreds of clients around the world, and we work one-on-one with small business owners to develop their skills, help them lead their teams, and really ensure that they grow in strategy and revenue. So if you find yourself as a business owner staring at all these hats on a daily basis, or part of a startup and you're staring at all these hats, we empathize with you. We know you're not alone. There's a lot of moving pieces, and that's where we really come in. We help you hold some of these hats. So today, if you're a current client, I'm going to walk you through some stuff that you should be talking to your advisor about. So if you aren't, please hold accountability to that and make sure that it's approached. And if you're not a current client, I'll walk you through this quick skill of communication rules. And at the end, I'll share with you briefly on how Cultivate can help you specifically with this skill and moving forward. So we know there's a lot of ways that you can spend your time as an employee or as a business owner. Today, we're going to get into incredible detail on really removing the distractions of phones and email. We find that's where most people spend their time and actually diminish their value. We know there's a large percentage of those that are on this webinar today. You're working 50 to 60 to 70-hour weeks, busting your butt, but then 15 hours of that is spent on phone and emails. Due to that, you never end up to spend time working on the goal because you're being constantly bogged down by your time. And that's what we're going to talk about. So the purpose is really to allow you to spend more time working on your goals and less time on the communication that's eating away at your day. And the outcomes we want to walk away with today are just to get you to write down your ideal communication rules. We'll talk about what that looks like, to create some working time boundaries for yourself and have that respect of when you know there's a cutoff point. And then just one big takeaway outside of those that you can implement immediately that you go, that's something I can do today and take action on. So that's really what we're going to kick things off in today. You all gave us some great questions when you registered, and we took those into consideration. We as many as we could for the purpose of what this is about today. So I'll try and work some of those answers in along the way. So let's be honest up front. The 11th hour. If we were to write an autobiography about our life, there's a lot of us in this room that we would have to title it The 11th Hour. Using the chat feature, who are my 11th hours individuals in this group? Who's constantly running around doing things at the last minute? Shirley, nice face, Andrew. Appreciate that. Yeah, yep. Kelly's blaming someone else. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of us in here. A couple people raising their hands. Yeah. Okay. 50% of the time. Yeah. Right. So we all have this need to operate like this. Sometimes, especially operating a business or a startup, we have to do some things at the last minute, but a lot of times we create our own 11th hour. And what happens is we get so used to running around at the last minute that we actually start to believe we're good at it. That's the problem. We actually believe that we do our best work in the final minutes and that we're just clutch players that can get it done. But that's really a facade. We're not good at running around at the end naturally. We're good at it because we've had so much practice doing it. And it starts to come with a price. And the reason we do this is because a lot of us believe we always have tomorrow. I know for me, when I run around the 11th hour, I'm always just, oh, there's a tomorrow. There's a tomorrow, right? And here's just a great quote. Tomorrow is this mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation, and achievement is stored. Putting things off. And when it comes to our time and things eating away at our time, let's look at this. Chat room. How many people see this on a daily basis? A couple people raising their hands. Yep. A couple people in here. We start to see this over and over again. I see it now, right? We get this warning on our phones that says like 20% battery remaining. And we hit this ignore button. Still got 20% left. I'm going to keep going. Then we get hit with this one, 10% left. And at that point, you would think like, let's go find a spot to plug in this phone. But we go, nah, I'm still have time. Still got plenty of time. I actually get mad when I see this warning because I go, how much battery did it take to show me this 10% warning? I probably would have had 11% if you weren't popping up all these notifications at me. And then what happens? Then we get hit with this black screen of death, right? This is how bad humans are at productivity and time management, is that Apple had to dummy proof a screen to show you how to eliminate this problem. And unfortunately, this is how a lot of us lead our lives, right? We just run ourselves down. We run ourselves down. We get these warnings. Hey, you're getting sick. Maybe that's a warning. You got 20% battery left. You have 10% battery left. And we think we still have more to go. And then bam, we're burned out overnight. And now we actually have to take days off to fully recoup. And we set ourselves back even further. This is where we want to operate. This feels good. This looks good. Nothing makes you happier than a full green bar on your battery. We can do this. Some of what we're going to talk about today is going to cover how to get some of that time back so you're not constantly draining and running around at the last minute. All right, before we fully dive in, let's agree here that why this skill is important is time is money. Okay, that's why we're all here. I want to save more time, I want to make more money. That's a lot of the goals that happen. What are you worth an hour? Have you ever thought about that? We can figure it out real quick. Take your yearly salary. I'm giving just 3 examples of broad spectrum here. Take your yearly salary and divide that by the number of weeks you work. Okay, in the example here, I'm just showing a standard 2-week vacation each year, so we're working 50 weeks a year. Okay, you have your salary, the weeks you work. Now divide that by a standard 40-hour week, and that is your hourly worth. So if you make $250,000 a year and you work 40 hours a week, your hourly worth is $125 an hour. If you make 80 grand a year and you work 40 hours a week, your hourly worth is $40 an hour. All right, now some of you have to work longer. Okay, so if it's 50 hours, we could show that. If it's 60 hours, we could show that. But here's the important piece, is not to devalue yourself. The longer you end up working for the same amount of pay, the less you become worth at an hourly rate. Sometimes we know that working longer is just inevitable, but it should be to advance goals that will eventually advance your worth. Don't spend time on items that don't add up to your hourly worth. That's why we're going to talk about communication rules today. All right, let's look at it one step deeper. If you want to make $1 million a year, you have to be worth $500 an hour. What tasks are you consuming that justify you making $500 an hour? What tasks can you get rid of that don't fit the need of $500 an hour? Removing some of the less important tasks and making time for the more important ones to boost your rate. All right. When we talk about hitting goals and start working towards those, remember the 80-20 rule. If you haven't heard of it, 20% of your activities make up 80% of your results. Okay. 20% of what you do make up 80% of the results. Are you able to focus on the right 20%? Are you being constantly consumed by the 80% that's only making up 20% of your results? Keep that as a filter tool as you start to move forward, as you start to organize. So for today, this is the lens in which we're going to operate from, talking about these 4 components and how to put some structure around them: email, text, phone, and any in-person meetings. So let's begin by talking about email. Let's use the chat function here. What is your biggest challenge currently when it comes to email? You get too many emails, you have an unorganized inbox, you feel you have to answer emails immediately. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to email? Kelly says too many. It never stops. Feel I need to answer immediately. Seeing them unread in my inbox. Answering emails immediately. Yeah, filtering important versus unimportant. The length and complexity emails require. Feel like I need to answer them and keep up with organizing and filtering. Having to clear spam. Way too many. Yeah, so we have a variety. You're trying to keep schedule. I've only checked during scheduled time. Yeah, that's a hard one, right? Sue said everything that everybody said. Yeah, these are a lot of common problems. All right. And as we start to work through some of this, just for expectation's sake, I'm going to oversimplify a lot of this just for the sake of time today. I'm going to make this sound easy. Okay. I empathize and know it's not as easy as I'm going to make it sound. But let's first talk about some facts. Okay. Email is rarely an emergency. Okay. Just some ground rules for us. Email is rarely an emergency. There's some industries where it operates like that. But generally, individuals email when they can afford to wait on a response. I'm going to say it again because that part's important for those of us that feel obligated to check this every time it dings. Generally, individuals email when they can afford to wait on a response. If there was an emergency, you would call 911. You wouldn't send them an email. Okay? And some of you are probably thinking right now, I get emails that are emergencies. Great. That's the point of today, is just to establish rules and filter for the situations that require that, so you don't have to be glued to 100 emails waiting for the one emergency. All right, that's ground rule number 1. Rhetorical question for the group: do you run outside every time that you hear the mailman? Okay, you don't. You check the mailbox when it's convenient for you. You've trained yourself to deprioritize the urgency on snail mail. You can train yourself to do the same exact thing when it comes to email. And some people say, but I get notifications that there's messages waiting for me. Let's think of the mailman scenario again. Your dogs start barking when the mailman comes. That is the same notification as your cell phone dinging. Okay, but you have trained yourself not to respond to that barking immediately. Flip it around. Amazon drops off a package now, rings your doorbell, and they leave. You look out the window and you see a truck driving away, you know it's Amazon. You'll go back to doing what you were doing and you will go get that package when time allows for you. You have a filtering system for checking these things. You just have to establish that same type of rule and system for your inbox. You don't want to become a slave to notifications. I'd actually recommend that you shut 99% of all your notifications off. Think about this one for yourself. How many people get back to you immediately? You have this need and desire in this process to answer all emails within 24 hours because it makes for good customer service. Okay, but how many people do that back to you? How many times do you fire an email out immediately? Stuart says too many people get back to you immediately. That does become a problem as well. That's also why you can't be glued to your inbox, because then you get into this back and forth that never ends. Now, some industries out there, it's true. Some industries are successful in this strategy. They can actually afford to have a team of people dedicated to just doing emails. But consider your strategy on this as a business, okay? Is two business days acceptable to get back to somebody versus 24 hours? Are you able to establish a rule for that, to set the precedent that everybody will get a response within 2 business days? And then you are able to filter out which ones go back immediately. Unless you work in an industry like booking events where there's legit emergencies of rescheduling people, you don't need to be glued. And even then you can set up rules so there's an emergency email contact only. Generally, email means I can wait. All right, quick poll here. There's two types of people in this world. Which one are you? I'm going to launch a poll. You should see it come up. Take a minute, just fill out. Are you option 1 on the left, or are you option 2 on the right? All right, just another minute here. We're about 70% here. One on the left, 2 on the right. All right, and close the poll here. Here's our results. We have 68% of the room say they are option 1, 33% of the room say that they are option 2. To me, that adds up to 101%. It's a little odd. Okay. So, are either of these right or wrong? I'd say they both have pros and they both have cons. Megan, right? You have option 2 for personal, option 1 for work, right? So sometimes we actually have different rules, and so we get ourselves into different mindsets. I'll say that person number 1 on the left possibly spends too much time on email, and because they're doing that, they might end up missing some of their goals because we are constantly trying to clear out our email. That's an option, okay? Person number 2, one of the cons there is this person might actually end up spending more time on email than they think because they can never find anything. The disorganization makes you search more and read emails that you don't need to read because you actually can't find what you need when you need to find it. So as a quick filtering system here, set up blocks in your calendar to check your email. Maybe you do it once in the morning, once at noon, and once right before you go. Have designated times to get into your email, okay? If that works for you, use a system like that. If you don't need to check it during the middle of the day, do it at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Okay, that still fits in line with a lot of people's 24-hour response time. When you check emails during this block of time, start with the oldest email first and use this filter, all right? If the email can be done in less than 2 minutes, do it right there. Do it. If the email cannot be done in less than 2 minutes, schedule it in your calendar to take care of at a later time. All right, schedule time in your calendar to do it at a later time. From there, you're either going to trash it or store it, but you have to get these emails out of your inbox. Store it by creating folders, trash it if you're never going to need it again. Okay? And Stuart was talking earlier about how too many people respond to emails too quickly. Final tip here, respond to emails early in the morning because others aren't always around to respond to you while you're still in your inbox. You don't want to get into a spot where you send an email and the person emails you back while you're still in your inbox, because then you end up in this never-ending cycle of having to live in it. Try and pick these times for you, since you can set up your own communication rules on to check your email at times when people aren't living in theirs. That helps you get it all out of your head, get it done very productively, and move forward. The reason we use this 2-minute filtering system and this storing and trashing is this helps us figure out how much time do we really need. Assuming that 50% of all emails that come in, take action at 2 minutes or less, and then 50% schedule to your calendar, right? And then storing or deleting takes a minute. Together, this averages out to like 90 seconds per email. Now look at a filter system here. How many emails do you get per day? And how much time does that mean that you really need to block off each day to really get through your emails? All right. Transition takes too much time. Block big sections off to get your emails done. Don't check a few emails, go do something else, come back, check a few more. You end up getting lost in a shuffle. Have these sections created to get them done. And here's some general email tips that we have here. Number 1, don't check your emails right before a meeting or a call. Chat room. Why don't we want to do this? Distraction, focus on the task at hand, distracted about the email instead. Yeah, you get distracted. Right? No time to really think. Yep. Yeah, what if it's a negative email? You checked it, now you went into a meeting about further business. or you're in a meeting where there's a different outcome or there's a different goal attached to that meeting, but now you're stuck on this emergency that you have to keep considering. You've actually created distraction management for problems for yourself because you allow that to cloud your mind rather than focusing on the next goal. This is how emails start to actually consume us away from goals or tasks at hand. Right, and Mike, great point. Good news is also a distraction. Let's say the deal that you were waiting on came in and you're really, really excited about it. Now you're thinking about that instead of focusing on the next meeting or the next call. Megan, you did that right before this webinar, so you haven't heard a word I've said yet, right? Lindsay said you might be late because you're replying to emails. Yeah, right. Now you actually might try and sneak one in. When next time you have a meeting, when people are a minute or two late, ask them if they were replying to emails right before they walked into that meeting. And I will guarantee you 80% of them probably were, because everybody thinks they can sneak out one more message in time. And that actually ends up making us late and distracting us from goals. Communication should not distract us from our goals that are going to move the business forward. Number 2, create a few big bucket folders for quick storage. Now, I'm saying this as a tip for those of you that were my option 2s that have thousands and thousands of emails in your inbox. Okay, reduce the clutter, reduce the stress, ease your life. Just to get you started going through the process, create a few big bucket folders. Create a client folder, create a partner folder if you have somebody at the business, an admin folder if you communicate a lot that way. Some people in here probably have a system, like a holding place, Mike. Great, good question. Yeah, you just have a folder and then everything just shifts to that. So now if you're looking for something from a client, you go into your client folder and search because it only searches there. It doesn't have to search every email that's just sitting out in the ether for you, which takes up even more time. And it allows you to start finding stuff quicker. Mike Hopkins, you raised your hand. Do you have a question? I'll let you type it if you do. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, a couple people raising their hands. If you do, just ask questions here. No problem, everyone. Some people in here probably have small folders already, right? They probably have like a big chunk folder like client or your customer, and then below that, they actually probably have little folders for each one of their clients. And if you have that already, that's great. If that works for you, I don't want you to change your system because of me. What I want to say for the people that aren't doing that is don't create a folder for everything immediately. Okay, for the people that aren't currently doing that, I'm just going to say it, you're not good at organizing yet. Okay, so just create big bucket folders that you can do really, really easily. If somebody's only emailed you once, there's no point for them having their own folder that can be bucketed. Create smaller independent folders when individuals email you enough to warrant having a search feature that goes right to them. All right, here's a big one. And Chris, I know we've talked about this before. Email is not a to-do list. Okay, your email is not something that's just, I'm leaving it here because I still have stuff to do on it. Great. Either do the email, trash it, schedule it, or store it. If you still have work to do on an email, get it in your calendar. Yeah, see, Chris doesn't like me when I tell her to get rid of her to-do list. Don't leave them in your inbox. To-do lists just make you feel like this has to get done at some point, and that's where stress starts to come up. Get it in your calendar so you know that it will get done. To-do list means you still have to do it, right? Get it on the calendar, it becomes to done. It has a spot where it will be done. You can remove a lot of emails out and a lot of stress from your life. Quick tip, 1 subject per email. 1 subject per email. If you find yourself typing an email to somebody and you're about to switch subjects, that should be a new email. Productivity gets lost when people try and change subjects through an email system. You ask one question about this, and then you ask another question about that, and what happens? What kind of response do you get? You get a response for one of those subjects, and generally not the one that you needed the most. That's just Murphy's Law, the way it always works. And you're going, I asked 2 questions, didn't you read it? And you're going, yes, you should have asked 2 emails at that point. Lindsay, I could tell your clients 1 subject per email. I would actually tell you to encourage your clients 1 subject per email. Tell them they'll get responses quicker from you. Make it to their benefit. You actually get responses quicker from me if you give me 1 subject. All right? And then NNTR. Anyone know what NNTR means? Did anybody Google it while we were on here? No need to respond. Great. Melissa, that's awesome. for those of you that didn't know, if you start putting that in your emails, for emails where you actually don't need a response from people, they will go Google what an NTR means and realize that was your passive aggressive way of saying, do not email me back on this. And that's okay. You don't need to get 15 emails a day from people saying thank you. Right? You send something back out. Got it. Thanks. We don't need that. Okay. We're adults. We don't need to clutter our inbox with polite gestures. Let's just assume that we're all polite to each other. Great assumption. Clear my inbox. Last one here, multiple subjects or multiple paragraphs. At that point, you could send a separate email. You might just want to have a call or a meeting about it. Okay, if you're going to write this 3-paragraph email, forget it. Set up a meeting. It's too much for anybody to read. We just talked about how many emails we get every day. We don't need that. You get a 3 or 4 paragraph email, you're frustrated. Yeah, nobody reads that much. You skim it. That's why people miss questions. All right, and those of you, whenever you get them, you're frustrated at getting them. Andrew says, would love a read option. Using Mail Tracker has been helpful for that. To show when the other person has read it. Mike, what is the best way to validate the receiver got it if using NNTR? So Mike, you can use the read tracker that Andrew was just talking about, like say, show me read receipts. Or if it's that important to where you actually need to validate, don't use NNTR. If it's that important. Does Google have a read tracker? Great question there, Megan. I don't know offhand. I would say Google it. They'll probably have a good answer for it. I'm half teasing you, but I don't have a good answer. Someone here might, and they can let you know here in the chat. So those are some email rules. I want to take about 3 minutes here using this chat feature. What email rules, aside from the 5 that I just showed, do you implement for yourself that you find to really work? We could really grab some value from the group here if you share with each other. Google's reading all of our emails. A little paranoid here. Boomerang plugin is great. Boomerang is a great program. Started using canned responses. Megan, that's great. If you have emails that you send out over and over and over again and the general tone is the same, you can use a canned response. Some people don't like using templates because they feel like the other party knows it's a template then and it's less personal. I say come clean, be honest about it, and say, and yes, this is a template. Let them know. It's okay. We all live in a world where we need to do more with less. It's okay to use templates and let people know. It's the people that use templates and don't, that they try and hide that it's a template, that's when you start getting weary on it. Zapier is the bomb. Zapier is good. It integrates a lot of apps and connects a lot of activity for you. Chatbots. Boomerang is great. Fixing subject lines when people change the subjects. Yes, Stuart, that's great. When people change the subject to another topic in the email, readjust that subject line before you reply so you can find it earlier. I think that's what you're saying, Stuart. 1 subject per email. People are ADD, can't handle that much info. Create rules and features to immediately filter emails into appropriate buckets. Ryan, that is great. If you have standard reports, if you have standard emails that come in, have a filtering system to where it just goes right into a folder that you can check that folder whenever you decide to. It's not hitting your main inbox. That's my version of what you're saying, Ryan. I believe that's what you're saying as well. Separating into sections or groups also help a lot. You work on social media, so you have a group called social media. Right, perfect. Big groups, big buckets. Separate email addresses for non-business subjects. That's awesome. Yeah, that's another thing. We can create separate emails, right? For those of you that have emergencies, have an emergency at email, and you only give that out to people where you know that would happen. And let them know that's your communication rule. If you have an emergency, send it here. If you send it to the other spot, I don't treat it like an emergency, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Having an alias. Yeah, same type of situation there, Andrew. Awesome. Some great feedback. Everybody just gave us a lot of great info. So if something grabbed you here, just take note on it. If you need us to elaborate on it further, you can put it into the Q&A at the end, and we'll make sure you get a little more elaboration on it. We'll communicate to you one-on-one to dive into it a little bit further to make sure you have some help on it. Let's talk about our next phase, text management. Okay? So first of all, you have to make a decision. Is for you specifically, and this is rhetorical, but you can answer in the chat if you'd like, is texting efficient or is it an interruption? How do you feel texting works in your world? For me, it's an interruption. Okay, so that it can be both, right? For me, my general rule when I'm doing business is it's an interruption. I prefer email. Stuart says it's efficient. He might actually have a preference as to why that works for him. Some people need it, some people don't. Andrew, I'd prefer an email so I could look it up later, right? So based on who we are, there's no right or wrong here. Okay, I'm just going to give you an option if it's not efficient for you. Okay, and even if it does, there's a couple things you can do. So one, if you're like Andrew and you want that email back, if somebody texts you and you don't want to open that line of communication to that individual, take their email, copy it, and take their text, copy it, and put it into an email and reply to them via email. Okay, that's a nice passive-aggressive way of saying, like, email me about this stuff going forward. If you need to get their email address, you can text them back and say, what's your email address? I'll respond to this through email. You just want to start to set that tone. You have one chance with everybody you meet to set up your communication rules. Do it from the get. So Chris says, what if their preferred communication method is a text? Great. If that's your customer and your client and you have to bend to them, that's okay. I think sometimes we often consider the other person first when they are the ones that actually need us. So if they need to get your whole sales department, right, we've talked about that. Sometimes it's better to set that expectation out of the gate, because the second you bend, the second you lose control. You have to find out what your own processes allow for your own rules with your organization. But I think you're allowed to set that example right up front. And we don't do text, just so we're clear. We don't do text here. Shutting off read receipts through text. Okay, I think by default, they're on when you get a phone. If you have them on, you don't want them on, you can shut them off. You don't have to let people see when they have your attention. Okay, once people see through a text that you've read it, it makes them want to follow up with you faster and more, and they start to become more persistent because they know you've seen it now, right? Then they keep going back to see, oh, are you typing? Are you typing? And they keep going back, right? We don't have to show everybody our whole hand. It's okay to read something, take it in, and get back to it later. Take control of your time. Don't let other people control your time. All right, and finally, delete conversations. Okay, this is the inbox 1 and inbox 2. Some people, you go into their text thread and you see 80 different conversations. They keep every text conversation they've ever had. You don't have to. Just so we're all clear, that is not a rule that you have to keep every single text from every single person. Delete some of them. I know, Stuart, I'm sorry. I'm really rubbing you the wrong way today. I apologize. Keep clutter out of your life. Once things are done, move on with your life. It's called progression, right? If you need the conversation one day and it's like a one-off, screenshot it, keep it in your photos so you can go back to it when you need it, but it's not staring you, flipping through 80 text messages every single day, okay? Unless it's your spouse. If it's your spouse, never delete it. Keep it 100% of the time. All right, quick side note here for my Apple users. If you have an iPhone and you work on an Apple computer, they actually talk to each other and they have shared texting capabilities. So you can actually view all of your text from the iMessage app on the computer. So you can actually get rid of them from your phone. So your mobile device is nice and clear, and then if you ever need the backup, it's already on your computer. Okay, you have to set that up and make sure it syncs properly. So do that before you just delete everything and say, Vince told me to do it. But that is a great option on there to clear your phone and not have this constant stress of both that we just carry around at all times. We just carry suitcases of communication with us everywhere we go, and it starts to get heavy after a while. Start removing some of the clutter from your life. Quick text management tips from the group. Anything you want to share with the group that you do? Leave the phone on silent. Yeah. Use the Mac trick. Yep, it's fantastic. Great. I got Stuart on board with me finally. Thank you. We agree. Awesome. Okay, we can move forward. Using Slack to keep things. Okay, here come a couple. Use Google Voice for a separate phone number. That is an awesome one, John. If anybody hasn't used this, Google Voice gives you a separate phone number that makes somebody tell you who they are when you go to answer the phone. It says, "Do you want to take a call from this person?" Right, and shuts it off. Or it emails the text, which is even better. Some good stuff there. Okay, let's talk about phone management a little bit. Okay, you have to know who is allowed to call you. Okay, decide for yourself, take a stand, who is allowed to call you and who is not. So those of us at work, now that cell phones are everywhere, we just assume that whoever has our number can call us at any time. And then we are completely accessible 24 hours a day. Set your boundaries. Set boundaries with family of when they're allowed to call you, and set boundaries with your coworkers of when they're allowed to call you. And they should probably flip-flop. So for me, if my wife calls me during the day, I know there's an emergency with our kids, because otherwise she knows, do not call me during the day. I don't want you to call me to ask me what I want for dinner. Send me an email. That's okay. I'll have time to get to emails. That's my boundary. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. That's mine. And then with your coworkers, have another boundary. That great. I'm available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day. After that, unless it's a complete emergency, send me an email. Have boundaries of what works for you. Okay. Let your coworkers know that you have email blocked into your calendar, so you are more likely to get back to emails. You don't have phone time blocked in your calendar, so email might be the quickest and easiest way, and it helps you stay focused. Okay. Your voicemail. Have your voicemail direct people to email you. Okay. Just let people go. Just say, hey, this is Vince. You can leave me a message. Just want you to know, email is the quickest way to reach me. Here's my email address. Put it in there. And then if you have people that call you repeatedly and they don't leave messages, block the number. If you direct people enough and they don't ever leave you a message and the number keeps coming back, just block it. Lindsay has a question. She says, what about for the clients that constantly call you, even though you have weekly meetings planned? Lindsay, question back to you. Do you answer? Are you completely available to them every time they call? You send them to voicemail? Perfect. Do you address it in the weekly meeting? You will today? Perfect. That's my advice there. Just let them know. And it's not bad. It's not meant to make people feel bad about it. It's meant to let them know, like, if you need an answer from me, there are better ways to go about it. It's just so you know, the attention that I give you when we have our meetings, I give that same attention to everybody else all week long. And while I don't answer phone calls in our meeting, I will not do that in other people's meetings. How would you recommend handling this if you're your own receptionist? Megan, yeah, it's a great question. Probably going to take a little more thought than off the cuff for me here. Can we circle back? Can you make sure you put this in the Q&A at the end of today's session, or even right now, and we'll either come back to it at the end or make sure you get an email? I want to think about that one for a little bit. Google Voice transcribes voicemails into emails. Yeah, perfectly, Mike. Yep. Any quick phone management tips for anybody in the room? Customize auto responses for incoming calls. Thank you for your call. I'm currently unavailable. We'll return your call after 5. Perfect. Through GSNRs and regularly scheduled touch points and expectation setting, I find off-the-cuff calls get reduced. Yeah. So what Bill is saying is Bill has these weekly accountability meetings called GSNR, and they have these regularly scheduled touch points. And so it encourages people to actually take their issues and concerns to those meetings versus just calling all over. I believe that's what you're saying, Bill. Move transcribe voicemails. Yep. Perfect, Stuart. Get everything into your email. Again, if this works for you, if phone works fine for you, keep it as is. You know what works best for you, but for those of you that find it to be a problem, get the email. Client constantly changes their priorities. Yep. With clients that use smart sheets. Okay, a couple different things. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Voicemail management. Thanks, Chanel. Great validation. Voicemail management. You got to manage your voicemails too. See on the left here, we're sorry this mailbox is full. You ever call somebody and get this? Doesn't this frustrate you when you call somebody and you get, we're sorry this is full? It's the easiest way to lose trust. How are you supposed to trust somebody, or how is somebody supposed to trust you if we can't even go in there and delete a simple voicemail or clear it out? Nothing says like, I don't value communication enough than to have that pop up. Okay, we're talking about getting everything over to email, but you still have to spend time clearing out voicemails for those that do. So again, just like emails, respond to the voicemail, transfer to your calendar, and then delete. Okay, if you can respond right away and you have the time, do it right then, get it done. If it's 2 minutes or less, get it done. Otherwise, put it into your calendar. Put it into your block of time where you can have a chance to get back to that voicemail. Send an email, making sure the person knows you will get back to them at that time. And then delete it. Get rid of them. Don't store them. I'm going to move forward here. Last one, in-person meetings. Right? The, hey, do you have a minute? Hey, do you have a minute adds up to a lot throughout the course of a week. Okay? Quick rule of thumb, don't let any in-person meetings ruin your day. Emergencies are the exception, not the rule. If somebody wants to meet with you, okay, if it's external, don't allow a meeting without a phone conversation first to qualify each other. You don't know that you want to meet this person, and this person shouldn't know that they want to meet you without talking to see if there's a qualification here on why we should meet. Okay? If you know the person, if it's internal, or if you decide you want to meet somebody, make sure the meeting is done by appointment so it fits into your calendar and you can plan for it and around it. And then keep the initial meeting to 30 minutes. The kickoff meeting, keep it to 30 minutes. All right, it's a great time barrier to have so we get to the point quicker. And that's the last piece here. Have clear outcomes to the meeting before it starts. Okay, measurable outcomes to the meeting before the meeting starts. You should never just meet somebody and just start going into something without knowing what are we looking to get out of it today. Start with the end in mind. Yeah, great, Mike, right? So when we kicked off today, we kicked it off and said, here's what we want. We want you to have some communication rules. We want you to create boundaries. We want you to have one takeaway that you can go implement immediately. We had some boundaries for you up front that let you know. Remember, the moment you bend is the moment you lose control. So I'm showing you right now my communication rules that I have. Email for me is the best and quickest way to get a hold of me. Texting is generally for emergencies only. These are my communication rules with coworkers. It's the opposite in my personal life. Phone calls generally need to be scheduled. It's rare that I just grab a phone call out of nowhere. It has to be in my schedule that I know it's coming in. And then in-person meetings for me require specific outcomes and then have to be scheduled. So take a minute and write down, just real brief, when you see what I have up here, if it fits you, you can mock it, that's okay. If you have your own, or I just want you to write down what rules you ideally would like to live by. Thanks, Kelly, appreciate it. Take a minute and write down the rules that you'd ideally like to live by. Some of you may be doing this, some of you might not. Just take that minute. And whoever's open to sharing, just give us a quick shorthand version of what you wrote down. Chris, same? Yep. Chanel, same? Great. Chanel, is this ideal or is this what you're doing so far? Chris, you have a problem with the in-person? You have a lot of people that say, don't you have a minute? Chanel, this is ideal. You sometimes handle in-person meetings. Okay. Sometimes we have to. These aren't rules we can change overnight. All right, one or two more people, then we'll move forward. Text and email are backwards to you, but something to think about. So text is the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of you, right? Email is kind of an emergency, so you got them flip-flopped right now. Zachary, you say something to think about. What would make you consider flipping it around? What was sticking out to you as we were talking that said you might want to start reversing some stuff? Staying present before meetings. Sue prioritizes phone calls, and most of your clients' inquiries come via phone. Okay, yeah. So you actually have to be a lot more flexible in the day if you constantly have incoming calls all day, and that's part of the job. Lindsay says, I have a client who wants to be on Slack and you hate it. It's very interruptive. It's an idea for me. I can fold her emails. You're right. Perfect. Wayne, text is best for you. It's immediate. Great. Andrew, can you touch on in-person meetings again as far as informing people, informing them of your rules, right? So for in-person meetings with me, like it has to be scheduled, okay? You don't just get to walk in the office You can't just go, hey, we're having a meeting right now. Generally, it has to be scheduled for me, okay, and it has to have an outcome attached to it. So, Mike, I think you sent it to a couple people are sending these to just the panelists versus all the attendees. But Mike, you said it's hard to say no for in-person drop-ins. That's something else we could talk about later, is having accountability meetings where people have a repeatable structure of a chance to speak. But it's a different situation we could talk about a little bit later. Andrew, would I have them email this initially? Yeah, I would. Yeah, have them email, and when you get back to it, you can decide, is this worth having a meeting? Let's have a meeting about it. Yep. So Megan says you deal with the real estate industry where clients and agents expect immediate, quick response, and availability past 5 p.m. Sometimes suggestions. It's hard to balance this with my ideal preferences. Yeah. So Megan, one of the facts that I've read and I've understood is like there's generally like a lot of fear that if we don't get back to people immediately, we lose the deal, we lose the business. And it turns out that that's true less than 10% of the time. It's just more the fear we have in our head. And the reason for that is like if you're able to get back and you still have a better offer, you're still going to get the business out of it. So you just have to be able to set the expectation up front with individuals, right? Just let them know like, hey, I generally get back to people within this window. Does that work for you? If there's a one-off where you have to get back to them afterwards, that's okay. But you don't always have to compromise your schedule to accommodate everybody else. Sometimes they have to compromise what they want a little bit too. I would just have the open conversation and see if you can find a balance there. It's a great way to start. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Some great feedback here. All right. So we can agree not everything is an emergency. All right. Sounds like what I'm hearing from the group here. Like we know this, we believe in it, but we have a hard time executing, right? Think about your hourly worth again. Think about where you're spending that instead of your goals. Is that worth that compromise? I'm compromising advancing my business or my career to just make sure people have responses immediately. Start to prioritize a little bit different and set up those boundaries of operation for yourself. All right, prioritizing urgency. This is a week-long training here. Stephen Covey has these 4 quadrants of urgency. Okay, this would take a week to really get into and do real well. I'm going to give it to you in about a minute just to have you start thinking about it differently. Okay, Stephen Covey suggests there are 4 quadrants when it comes to prioritizing your urgency. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. Think of quadrant 1 like things that have deadlines and any crisis or emergencies that come up. That's Q1. Quadrant 2 is important, but not urgent. Okay, this is like planning for something, building out a presentation, doing prep work on a sales call, relationship building, making sure we're advancing, right? Important, but not urgent. Like this has to get done. It just doesn't have to get done this second. Okay. Quadrant 3, urgent, but not important. These are like interruptions. These are the, hey, do you have a minute? All right. Some of the emails you get, some of the phone calls you get are urgent, but they're not important. Like somebody popped in, so you have to address it, but it didn't actually need to be done right now. Number 4 is just not urgent, not important. These are just time wasters. Okay. So let's do a quick poll of the group. What quadrant do we want to operate out of each day in an ideal world? About 5 more seconds here. Awesome. Okay. So I shut it off a little bit early for the sake of time today, but 31 people, 89% of the group said we should ideally live in quadrant 2. And in a working world, that's right? Quadrant 2. We want to be focused and working on things that are important, but not urgent. You will always have stuff fall into Q1. That's fine. Don't create Q1 for yourself. Okay. Any repeating activity that is done in Q1 can be moved to Q2. Okay, Chris lives in quadrant 1 due to other people's lack of planning. Right. Other people's lack of preparation should not cause your sense of urgency. This is the point of having communication rules in place, is that there has to be a penalty for when people cause urgency. What can be done in Q2? What can you move in there? Okay, again, much larger training that we'll probably actually cover on a different webinar in full, but just want to present this today because a couple of people asked, how do I prioritize better? Rank out the tasks you have that are on repeat every single week and put what bucket they fall into, and then you schedule them in quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4 order. All right, quick piece here. Do versus do. It's one of my favorite things to teach people. Oftentimes, we get a project that we need done and we schedule when it's going to be due, but we don't schedule the time that we actually have to spend to work on it to make sure it gets done. This is how we end up at the 11th hour. We are great about putting deadlines in our calendar. We are not great about scheduling the work and prep time to make sure we achieve that goal in time. If you have a goal due May 1st, put time in your calendar to work on it now, right? Maybe a couple hour blocks each week to work on it now, next week, and the week after. So you are done 2 weeks ahead of time. And then last minute, 11th hour, all you have to do is do a quick check and go, any last minute changes? No, I'm good. Okay? Do. Schedule the goal, schedule the tasks. Last piece here, 3 options. Everyone needs to know, not rocket science. Okay? Delegate, leverage, say no. Delegate. Find somebody that you trust that can do it for you, right? If you even want to use the hourly worth to determine that, who can do it, where it makes sense and fits into that job. Leverage. If you have to make phone calls, do you have any driving time? Do you have any time behind the wheel? Can you make phone calls while you're driving? If you're coaching your team, can you listen to your team's calls while you're working out, while you're driving? Some people in here text while they're going to the bathroom. That's all leverage. Anytime you can do 2 things at once that makes sense, leverage it together if you can. Look for those opportunities. Sometimes you have to seek them out. And then say no. The most important one. If you walk out of here with anything else, just know that you are allowed to say no. You don't have to stretch your week so thin that you can't focus on your business. Tell people no. All right? When Chris says that you have like a lot of people's lack of planning leads to your Q1, tell people no. Watch what happens the next time. All right, they will either go find a different route, or if it's due to something that they did, it's a penalty and they will have to shift. Mike, am I really encouraging texting in the bathroom? No, I'm not encouraging it. But if you do it, I'd say great use of leverage. Let's do a quick poll here. Close it out. Which one of these options do you find to be the most challenging for you? Chris, I know we've talked before about that payroll, but I say if somebody doesn't get paid, that would make sure they got something to you on time the next time. I don't know your world enough to know if you can do that or not, but I would encourage you to really try and take a stance on that. Understood. All right. Share the results with the group. Looks like saying no is the hardest thing for all of us. Yeah, we're people pleasers. By nature, that's what we want to do. Oftentimes, though, when we try to please everybody, what happens? We end up pleasing nobody. So for the sake of time today, I want to grab a takeaway or 2 from everybody. But before we do, I think we had a pretty cool webinar today. A lot of great interaction, a lot of great ideas from everybody. I want you to vote on what the big bucket topic is going to be when we do this at the end of next month or at the beginning of May. I want you to have a say on it so we can make sure that we're hitting the stuff you really want to know. So I just launched the poll. What main category would you like to see discussed in the next webinar at the end of April or early May? Which big bucket would help you the most in your job? I'll wait on a couple more people here. This is the one, if you're going to answer any poll, this is the one I want to make sure you answer. So I'll give it an extra beat here. Awesome. Okay. It looks like we have recruiting. 34% of the people said recruiting. 27% of people said financials, and the other two are tied. So these are all topics we're going to get to over time. So, but based on this, we are going to cover something in the realm of recruiting as it comes to our next webinar that we're going to do probably early May, maybe that first week of May. So we will narrow down the subject a little bit more specific based on some of the feedback that we get. So it will be on recruiting. So real quick, takeaways from today. Just give me one. It's the biggest thing you're going to be able to walk out of here with. Time management ideas, just say no. 2-minute rule, email buckets, don't leave a voicemail full. Look at these, a lot of different ones. Do and do, yeah, stick to the plan. I love this. I love seeing people take out so many different options. It's great. It's okay to follow boundaries with your clients. I've seen a few takeaways that came from suggestions of the other people in this group. Just want to share that's why you speaking throughout this really matters and really helps these individuals. 2-minute rule, cleaning the inbox a bit. Yeah. Reminder not to get sucked into the immediacy of email. Not everything's an emergency. You're right. Better prioritization if it's urgent. Yep. Awesome. You're taking the time to write these down. You took the time today to show up to this webinar. Okay, we looked at your hourly worth at the beginning of this call. You said your hourly worth made it worth it to jump on this webinar and here today. Make sure you grab that dollar amount of value out of this and make sure you make those changes. It's the only way anything gets done is with intention. So if you're a business owner, I encourage you to take us up on a free road mapping meeting if you haven't already. We'll help you set up your calendar. We help you manage your time. We start with the basics with everybody. Those clients on the call can already tell you that. We estimate that people spend half of their world on this, on email and phone alone. If you feel like this, you need to meet us. And if you're an employee and you need help on your communication rules or communication management, let us know. I work in the training department with all frontline employees on this as well. Get in touch with us.